It's Hyp3r Halloween!
Ah yes, After Dark Horrorfest films, also known as 8 Films to Die For. I love the concept of this back when the group first started releasing horror films in 2006. After Dark Horrorfest was a film festival that featured several independent horror films. The films were distributed by After Dark Films, which itself was an independent film production and distribution company. The films ranged from really good to downright awful, unfortunately. At least from the few that I remember watching. That being said, it has been a while since I watched through them, so, grain of salt on that opinion. I was very impressed for the 2006 batch of movies, as most of them had a scary atmosphere and impressive visuals. The 2007 batch kind of ruined any excitement for me though because of some of its entries, and I ultimately stopped paying attention to these movies after that. Well, in any case, that's enough reliving the past. I want to focus on my favorite movie out of the After Dark Horrorfest films that I've seen, The Gravedancers. The story revolves around a group of old friends, Sid, Kira, and Harris. One of their other friends passes away, and the group meets up in the cemetery he's buried in to remember their lost friend. By meeting in the cemetery, I mean they decide to break in late in the night after the funeral. They drink around their friend's tombstone and, have a good time. Sid ends up finding a mysterious envelope on one of the graves. He opens it to find a strange quote. "O joyful, O delighted, O unfortunate one, weep no more, this departed son. Life's for the living, not the dead. Forget tomorrow and live now instead. The night you breathe while they cannot, so dance ye soul on their resting spot. Read these words, sound thy voice, revel and sing, rejoice, rejoice, rejoice." Nothing short of Shakespeare. So, anyway, the group decides to dance on the graves as a celebration of life. They soon wish they hadn't, though, because weird things start occurring in their daily lives. Harris and his wife hear strange noises in their house, Kira is hurt by an unknown assailant, and random fires ignite in Sid's house. The group decides that what is happening is paranormal, so they enlist the help of paranormal investigators. Vincent Coche, I believe that's how it was pronounced, and Francis Culpepper. These investigators quickly determine that the quote Sid read wasn't actually a celebratory message, but actually a curse, and dancing on the graves actually set the curse into effect. Whoops! Now the group has until the next full moon before they're killed by the spirits. And go figure, the graves that the main characters danced on were in the violent killer section of the graveyard, which makes me wonder about their deceased friend. Regardless, the group is being terrorized by the worst of the worst. Harris is plagued by an axe murderer, Kira is being assaulted by a serial killer and or rapist, and Sid is tormented by a pyromaniac. The ghosts themselves look absolutely terrifying when they appear on the screen. They have these distorted smiles that honestly really freak me out. This movie actually has a scene in it that really got me in terms of a scare. It's a typical shot of someone in bed and the scare comes from them turning around. But it was so freaky with the way it was executed and due to the setup, and of course the ghost's face. Anyway, back to the story. The crew ultimately finds out that in order to end the curse, they will have to dig up the bodies of the graves they danced on and rebury them. This, of course, doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because Culpepper wanted to document more of the haunting for publicity, so she sabotaged the group. Most of the group dies, but Harris's wife and Coche make it out alive. Harris manages to bury the remains of his tormentor prior to being killed. It is a close call though because he was actually buried alive, just not long enough to actually die. Fun fact, Dominic Purcell, the actor who plays Harris, was actually buried alive. He held his breath and everything until he was dug up. Apparently though, it took a while for the actors to actually find him to dig out of the grave. Well, I guess that isn't necessarily a fun fact, but it is a pretty neat piece of trivia, assuming that it's real. This movie is definitely a slow burn and doesn't ramp up the action until the end of the movie. That's not necessarily a negative in my opinion though. The scares start off slow and escalate as the movie progresses. Apparently the Gravedancers was supposed to be part of a trilogy, although I'm not entirely sure how the story would have continued. I'm guessing it would have involved different people dancing on the graves. Either way, there is some great atmosphere and good scares in this movie. It's a little slow at times and the acting isn't necessarily the greatest, but I still hold this film in high regards. So, if you're interested, give it a watch.